All right, good morning and welcome to the 2023 Data Science and AI Salary Report presented by Burtch. My name is TJ King and I'm the Director of Market Operations here at Burtch for the direct placement business. I also lead our recruiting for our senior level roles in the data science and analytics space. And soon we'll be the founder of our new Burtch Expert Network and CXO service lines. Presenting with me today, I also have Dr. Beverly Wright. Beverly's the head of data science solutions here at Burtch, and she also wears a lot of other hats, including presidents of the Analytics Society for Informs, board chair for Technology Association of Georgia, director for TAG Data Science for Good initiative, and the director of UGA Executive Programs in Data Science. We're very lucky to have Beverly. She's been an active member in the quantitative space for over 30 years. And many of you attending today may already be part of the Beverly orbit. Beverly and I will take you through the webinar today. If you have any questions, please add them to the chat. We'll have some time at the end to go through a few of those. I'm sure most people here this morning are familiar with Burtch, but for those who are new, or if it's been a while, I thought I'd share some updates and highlights. Burtch is best known as the talent solutions leader for all things data and analytics. And we've grown a lot in the past couple of years and are excited to be recognized by Inc. 5000 list for fastest growing companies. We've expanded our service offerings to include direct placement, contract staffing, fractional executive, managed services, and more. We've also expanded our physical footprint with offices in Cincinnati and Philadelphia. This growth and the development of these new service offerings also changed the category that Forbes recognized us this year and moved us into the professional recruiting firms. So excited to be part of the 2023 list for Forbes professional recruiting firms this year. And also excited about our inclusion in the best of staffing for both talent and clients. And this is important for us because we really strive to build a community for our candidates, but also deliver outstanding service to our clients at the same time. All right, so here we go. Beverly and I believe we have another great report to share with you this year, and I'm excited to walk you through it today with her. I'll take you through some of the background, the methodology, some definitions, share some insights and survey findings, and then I'll pass it to Beverly to take you through the numbers, our analysis, and as I mentioned, we'll do some questions at the end as well. This is our 11th year publishing this report for our data science and AI professionals. If you haven't already, you can get access to the full report from our new website using this QR code. As I mentioned earlier, it's been a year of growth and change here at Burtch, and the updated website was just one of those. If you haven't, I'd encourage you to take a look. As part of that new website, we've developed a new community I'd encourage you all to sign up for to stay up to date with all things Burtch. In that community login, you'll find things like our salary reports, a new salary calculator we've developed, job postings, blog posts, and more to come in the future too. Once you sign up for that report, the community, that full comprehensive report will be sent to everyone who signs up. I also wanted to highlight a few new things for our report this year, which we're excited about. We have bonus data for the first time ever, and this kind of just dipping our toe into the water here. We'll look to grow this portion of the report in future years. And I'm also really excited to share that with the help of Beverly and Scott Nestler, we've added significance testing to our analysis for the first time ever. Similar to last year, we have, again, a sample size of over 1,800 professionals spread out across the country, different job levels, and tons of different industries as well. We're going to pivot here to give you a little bit about, what makes our report unique, what our methodology is, and walk you through a couple definitions. So first and foremost, I think, what makes this report so special is the focus solely on data science and AI professionals. Additionally, and we'll talk about this a bit more in a couple slides, we also distinguish between data science and AI professionals. So we'll get into what those mean to us. And, when you look back, 11 years ago, the reason that we started this whole report was just to provide more accurate numbers for people in the quantitative field. And we continue to strive to do that each year. A couple other points that make our study unique is that all the data points that are collected and used in the study are from one-on-one personal interviews with professionals. Look, there's a lot of laws out there that limit employers' ability to ask questions about compensation, but our experience here at Burtch is that, as we build relationships with candidates over the years, they're happy to share freely what they're making. And while we have a database of over 100,000 professionals, you can see by our sample size, we're really quite picky about the points we use for our data report. And then finally, what I love about our report is that it goes into so much detail about how job level, region, industry, gender, and education impact compensation. As I mentioned earlier, one of the things that make this report special is our differentiation between data science and AI. As many of you know, Burtch has been focused on working in the quantitative space for 15 years now. And when we started, there was job titles like statisticians and quants. And last year, we updated our naming conventions to data scientists and AI professionals to more accurately reflect today's current hiring environment. Everyone on this call knows that what one organization calls a data scientist can be vastly different from the next. So since every organization uses different titles, we like to focus on the work a professional does and classify them based on that. And while there are many similarities in the work that data scientists and AI professionals do, we've focused on a few key areas of difference. So first and foremost, the type of data that the professional uses is probably the most important one. So as we define it, data scientists are more focused with structured data, where AI professionals spend more time with unstructured data. Another thing that we've noticed is that educational background plays a role in the types of roles that professionals take on. So for both data scientists and AI, we see a lot of math, we see a lot of statistics, but we see more business analytics and econ for the data scientists, and more computer science and engineering for our AI professionals. We realize that this is certainly not the end-all, be-all of definitions, and there's really no perfect way to do this, but this is where we've landed for definitions for our report. Because this is an ever-evolving field and we're focused on staying up to date with latest trends, this is something we'll always pay close attention to so that our reports remain valuable to all of you here today. One thing that's for certain is it'll be interesting to see what happens with the continued explosion in AI and how we define roles moving forward. You'll see that in our study, we've used both characteristics of jobs like level, location of employer, industry, and also demographic characteristics like gender, years of experience, residency status to segment data scientists. Many of these are obvious and straightforward, but I thought it would be good to share our job level definitions before I pass it to Beverly and we jump into the data. So here you'll see our individual contributor job levels. So you can think of IC1 as those early entry professionals, often coming out of their master's or PhD programs, titles like data scientist or analyst. IC2 is more of your 4 to 8 years of experience. You can think of titles like senior data scientist. And then IC3, these are our more tenured practitioners. They still don't have any direct reports, but they probably mentor more junior data scientists. You can think of titles like lead or principal falling into this category. Then we have our manager job levels. We have MG1, which is our first-time managers, often leading a small team within a function. Titles like manager, senior manager, team lead. Then you have MG2, which often leads a function within an organization. Director or senior director are common titles here. And then we have MG3, which can sometimes be senior director or most often VP, SVP, or head of titles. These are more focused on strategy and leading an entire group. One thing we've also identified is, as we have grown our candidate pool, we probably need to add an MG4 category in the future. So look for that in next year's salary report for, C-suite leaders in the data space. Next, I kind of want to dive into some insights and trends when we look at the market holistically. And for me, the one thing that stands out the most, the last few years have been a roller coaster, and it's really been this mismatch of supply and demand that has had a huge impact on the industry. Last year, we reported on the Great Resignation, frenzied hiring, and huge compensation increases. Now in the current market, part and due to that overhiring combined with current economic uncertainty, we've seen layoffs, hiring freezes, tight budgets, all of which have resulted in a surplus of available data and analytics talent, which you'll see later has done some slowing of compensation increases and resulted in both conservative and really highly selective hiring processes. What will the future hold? Well, we believe that's hard to say, but we've observed some trends and recently conducted a survey that might shed light on what's to come. So I'm going to pass it over to Beverly to share some of the trends that she's noticed.
Yeah, thanks. The one trend in particular that I see all the time in observation with some of the community engagement activities is there seems to be this rise of specialization among data scientists. The world of wearing many hats and being able to do many different things in many different industries and solve a wide range of different types of business problems seems to be on the decline. So what do we mean by specializations? Well, for one, there's business problem specializations. For example, optimizing sales, understanding customers and markets, streamlining the supply chain, data scientists that specialize in these particular types of business questions seem to becoming more common. A second type of specialization is really based on the skill category. So some examples there, being able to specialize in LLMs is obviously super hot right now. Generative AI, natural language processing, having a specialization in neural networks. These types of skills-based specializations appear to be on the rise. And then a third type of specialization is around industry. I see this in particular with industries like healthcare or financial services, but we're also seeing in governmental world and the nonprofit space that being able to understand those particular industries and really immersing yourself in those industries is becoming more dominant, it seems, to see these types of specializations. On the AI front, of course, we're seeing some crazy level of growth. Really interesting to see the AI expansion and the skills demand. Of particular interest, we're starting to see some job titles that are very intriguing. As an example, Data Science Director of Generative AI is one, and also we're seeing things like a prompt engineer. Sometimes knowing how to query a system or ask a question in a way is a very good skill to have when you're talking about AI. We're also seeing data science as a service and AI as a service types of oriented roles. So it'll be interesting to see in the next 5 years about where AI takes us.
Thanks, Beverly. I'm going to dive into a survey we did here in Q3, just to give a sense of kind of what we're seeing in the market too. So we sent out a survey to our clients, and we had about 155 unique responses. And so I just wanted to highlight kind of what organizations out there are doing. So when we asked if organizations were going to plan to grow, hold steady, or cut back this year, we had 31% planning to grow their teams, 40% looking to hold steady, and 29% looking to cut back. And then we wanted to dig a little bit deeper on those that are hiring. What are the main reasons they're doing that? So you'll see here that those that are hiring, 24% looking to hire to increase headcount and grow, while 51% primarily looking to backfill, and the remainder was for project-based work. We also wanted to get a sense of if they were looking to hire permanently, contract, or considering both. So it was interesting to see, in a market that's been dominated by permanent hiring historically, 54% looking to hire perm, 26% contract only, and the remaining 26 both. So 46% of those that responded considering contract as an opportunity. So you'll see that trend pop up later as something to think about in this uncertain market. We also asked the respondents to indicate if they are going to return to hiring, when they plan to do so. So interestingly here, you see almost 60% look to resume hiring plans in either Q3 or Q4 of this year, while 41% looking to wait until 2024 and kind of see what those macroeconomic signals are. So hopefully we'll see more companies jump off the fence and back into the hiring pool. The other thing we included in our survey was, one slide ahead there. As I mentioned, we kind of wanted to give some advice as well on how to navigate this current market. And as I mentioned earlier, with 46% of our respondents to our survey considering contract opportunities for hiring, it's important for people at all different stages of their career to consider that in this uncertain market. So contract roles for early career professionals, and why is that important for them? It'll help them gain experience, develop their resume, could potentially be a pathway to a full-time opportunity, and certainly an opportunity to grow your network. We also have a lot of senior professionals that are interested in contract opportunities right now, offering, which offer to them kind of diverse projects, different industry exposure, a little bit of that try before you fully commit to an organization opportunity as well. But it also can give our senior level practitioners a opportunity to leverage their expertise to add value to organizations. One thing that we've been focused on here at Burtchworks is this idea of leadership as a service. And as I mentioned at the start of our call, you'll see some announcements coming soon about the creation of the Burtchworks Expert Network. And what this is a community, a group of data science leaders that are, like I mentioned, looking for diverse, unique, flexible opportunities to provide value to clients in different ways. And this is really appealing to clients right now because they're addressing organizational limitations, They can tap into seasoned leaders and manage costs and have flexibility in how they do that. So it's something that we think will continue to be popular moving forward. The other thing that's changing in this current market is shifting candidate priorities. You know, as we looked back to the Great Resignation and that frenzied hiring, getting that compensation was really top priority for a lot of our candidates. And what we're seeing now in this uncertain market is that job security has really jumped up the list. So you see that there at number 2. Career growth continues to be a main priority for all of our professionals. They want to, you know, feel supported and have opportunities to grow. And oftentimes, when they don't feel that, that's when they'll start to look for other roles, and that's something we'll talk about here shortly. That work from home flexibility continues to remain important to them. When while maybe a year and a half ago, this looked like 100% remote, this is looking more like 2 or 3 days in the office, 2 or 3 days at home, and that provides professionals with the flexibility that they're looking for. And then these last 2 for me kind of go together. Data professionals are always looking for 1, interesting work that's challenging them, but 2, organizations that make a commitment to data science and analytics. And that can be financially with appropriate tools and teams, but also valuing the work that they do and putting it to good use. So we want to think about these shifting priorities as we think about how do we retain quality talent and how do we attract quality talent. So to keep those A players on our team, things you can do outside of compensation, make sure you have development and upskilling opportunities. Job security, like I mentioned, is super important to them. Be transparent and clear in your communication. Provide them with reviews, good managers and mentorships, set clear expectations and growth plans, and keep that communication open with them. As I mentioned, that flexible work environment is a good way to retain people. Again, I don't think it has to be 100% remote. Certainly we have clients that are that, but most are in that 2 or 3, maybe 4 days a week, from home, and then, a couple days in the office as well. Culture remains, a really important piece. The people that they're working with, the leaders that they have, and the mission of the organization, are they making an impact on the world that we live in, remain really important and good ways to retain your top A players. How do you attract those A players is another thing that we wanted to provide some insights on. Develop, clear career trajectory and then mobility within your organization, especially for those early professionals. Having options to move around in your organization is always great as they, learn about different ways that they can impact the business. Highlight the interesting work that you do. As you're interviewing people, talk about the projects that are in the pipeline, talk about the success stories that you've had and the impact that data and analytics have had on the business. Make sure you're putting the work to good use. Make a commitment to data and analytics. Share the investment that the organization has made. Share the reporting structures and how decision makers are using data and analytics to make decisions. The other thing is, develop relationships with academic institutions, advocacy groups, go to industry events, be out there and talk about the successes that you're having. That will make your organization more attractive to the new talent coming out of school. So that was a lot for me, and I know the main reason everybody came today was to get a peek at the numbers and our analysis around them. So I'm going to pass it over to Beverly and let her take it from here.
All right, very cool. Thanks, PJ. I am excited to tell you about what this year looks like for the Burtch Works 2023 salary report. So let's get into the compensation changes over time. Looking from 2019 to 2023, we see for all 6 job categories that TJ outlined, from individual contributors 1, 2, and 3, and managers 1, 2, and 3, we see from all 6 categories a relatively flat percentage change in salary year over year until we get to 2022, at which point we see a little bit of a jump that seems to be around 10% for data scientists. And we're experiencing some similar percent changes for 2023. It's important to note that we can't expect a 20% for the next year and a 30% for the next year. 2022 may have been a bit of an anomaly with that 10% jump, and now we're sort of steadying ourselves. For AI professionals, looking at the same trend lines in data, we see similar type of pattern, except instead of a 10% jump, we have a 15% jump in 2022. And we also noticed that there's a larger range when you look at the different categories, with the IC3 being some of the lower, around 8%, and MG2 being some of the higher, around 15% for 2023. So we're really just looking at that trend, not the specific values, where we saw a spike in 2022 and now a flattening in 2023 for percent change. Now, thinking about the mean base salary, we wanted to start off, before we get into the nitty-gritty, with just where are they right now. So looking at the mean base salaries across all 6 job categories, the light blue bar represents data scientists, and the darker bar represents AI professionals. As far as baseline mean base salary, we're noticing around 100K for entry-level data scientists and up to 250K for the highest managers in this group. AI seems to experience a similar trend, with around what could be maybe 10K more for them. It's also important to note that there's a possibility of a slight downward bump when you move away from the highest level of individual contributor into the lowest level of manager. We also wanted to compare, well, how is this year doing compared to last year? So we looked at 2022 data science mean base salaries compared to this year in 2023, and we did some significant testing. And what we found is that for individual contributors 1, 2, and 3 for data science, we see a significant increase in base salaries across these 3 job categories. It's interesting to note as well that we don't see a significant difference for any of the manager levels. Now, notice there's a little bit of volatility in MG3, and that's due to the smaller sample sizes, but there are no significant differences among any of the manager level for data science mean base salaries from 2022 to 2023. Looking at the same type of data for AI professionals, we see something that's really, really interesting. That's 2 reallys, y'all. So for individual contributors 1 and 2, there's a similar pattern of an increase. While not great, there's still somewhat of an increase from 2022 to 2023 for mean base salaries across those 2 categories. And the interesting thing is, for the, I think, first time in our 11-year history of producing the salary report, we actually see a significant decline in one of the categories, individual contributor 3. Last year, the mean base salary for AI professionals was around 176 for this job category. And this year, it is significantly different by about 9K at around 167. So we thought that was especially interesting. The IC3 contains roles like principals or individual contributors like a senior data scientist, and it's interesting to note that there is a slight decline there. Now, as similar to the data science data that we just looked at, no change significantly in the managerial level. several data science and AI jobs have started offering fairly substantial bonuses, especially at the managerial level. So we thought we'd take a look at those numbers as well, because the base salary definitely does not tell the whole picture. For data science, we see a 10% median bonus on base salary for mid-level individual contributors. And we just picked IC2 as sort of a representative of the individual contributors that's highlighted here. But you can also see for the entry level, it's around 12%, and for the higher level individual contributor, it's around 14%. Now, at the manager level, mid-level manager, it's about double of the bonus percentage on their mean base salary. So 20% is the median percentage bonus on mean base salaries for mid-level managers in data science. For AI, we see a similar pattern, with the biggest difference being in the individual contributors, where it appears that they're getting a slightly larger percentage. It seems this year, and I've noticed this trend happening, that data science and AI professionals are held accountable more and more to KPIs that are revenue driven or reduction in costs. So perhaps that's what's driving some of these bonuses to be fairly large at the managerial level. Now, we wanted to do some really interesting demographic analysis, and with the plethora of data that we have at our disposal from our database, we handpicked a handful of things to bring to you that we thought would be most intriguing. One in particular is around the highest degree earned in education. Lots of people ask me, do I absolutely need to get a master's degree? Is there some way I can bypass that path, because it's very disruptive if you're already working and you have a family and you have a life going, to have to stop and get a master's degree, or even try to get one while working full time. In prior years, I would have said, without a doubt, absolutely, you definitely need a master's degree. I believe in prior salary reports, these numbers were 90% or more that had at least some advanced degrees. This year, however, we see around 69% for data scientists that had at least a master's degree, and around 83% for AI professionals with at least a master's degree. It's also interesting to note that if you are curious about a PhD, almost 1/3 of AI professionals have a PhD, clearly much higher than the general population, and possibly we're luring away some of them from academia to the practitioner space. We also wanted to look at the types of degrees that we're dealing with here. The light blue line indicates concentrations for data science, and the darker blue lines indicate for AI professionals. It's important to note that our study doesn't yet include majors that are relatively new, like majors in analytics specifically, or data science. There are even some schools like Kennesaw State that have a PhD in something like machine learning. So these are more traditional areas of concentration. And based on those traditional areas of concentration, the light blue, we see data scientists typically come from business and math and stats, whereas AI professionals are from math and stats, engineering, comp sci, with some from business, and still a good amount from the natural sciences and other areas. We also wanted to look at residency status breakdown, which seems to be trending in a certain way, perhaps with fewer U.S. citizens per group. So this year, data scientists, as far as residency status, about 63% of them are U.S. citizens, whereas with AI professionals, it's around 51% that hold U.S. citizenship. Now, many people ask me, where is the right place to find a job? Is there a certain part of the country Do I have to go to California? Do I need to go to New York? Not necessarily. So for data scientists, we wanted to look at mid-level individual contributor as sort of a proxy for the whole category. And for mid-level contributor data science, the only significant difference that we see is actually in the Midwest. The Midwest group of 114 to their average right here, they're significantly lower than the 129, the 128, and the 131 that you see on the top bubbles. But they're not significantly different from the Southeast, which is around 120. So the only real difference here is the Midwest that has a significantly lower mean base salary for individual contributor 2. Now, looking at the same type of analysis for AI professionals, also for individual contributor level 2, there are no significant differences really. So while you might think you need to run out to California to get the most salary, we're not really seeing a significant difference with individual contributor level 2 for AI professionals. So stay here if you're in the Southeast with me. Don't leave me. People also ask me all the time about industries. You know, I ask more commonly, what's the data science innovation and who's progressing and how are they advancing? Am I going to be able to do cool things at certain industries and not at others? Well, we don't have that exact data, but we do have mean-based salary, which we could potentially use as somewhat of a proxy for those kinds of questions. So looking across industry for data scientists, we wanted to see if there are any dramatic differences in base salaries. Again, looking at individual contributor 2, just as a proxy for the whole category. And we found that tech, telecom, financial services, and consulting seem to be leading the pack as far as mean base salary pay. Now that may or may not mean that they're more advanced, that they're doing cooler things, that they have more difficult business problems to solve, that they're using more advanced methods, but it does show that they are paying. So that's always a good sign. The same type of analysis for AI professionals, super interesting because the industry landscape is a bit different from data scientists, showing still the tech telecom, but also look how healthcare and pharma have jumped up here. Healthcare and pharma is in the higher ranks for base salary for individual contributor level 2 on AI professionals, and consulting shows up again as some of the higher paying industry jobs. Now I can't not talk about gender. We have to talk about gender. This is a conversation that there are a number of organizations Burtch works partners with and supports to help with elevating data science and AI women and helping with pay equity. So we thought this would be really interesting to see how it looked this year. We see that this year, the percentage of women in data science appears to have moved to 28%. In last year's study, I believe it was slightly under a fourth. So 28% could mean some progress, about 4 points from last year. And for AI professionals, only 1/5 of AI professionals are women. We didn't quite have enough samples to assess non-binary workers, but I thought it was really interesting that only 1 in 5 of our AI professionals were women, and we have a fairly large sample size, which is probably representative of the population. Now, thinking about the 28% that we saw as data science women, if you think about that 28%, how does that bounce around by job category, or does it bounce around? If we look at individual contributors 1, 2, and 3, and we have managers 1, 2, and 3, they're all sort of dancing around that 28 line. We don't see any major pattern, so we still have about 28% female in all 6 of these categories. We didn't significance test these, but if I had to guess, maybe the individual contributor level 2 is slightly higher than the mean, but most of these are coming up pretty close to 28%. Now, in contrast to data science, think about the 20% that we said for AI professionals, about 1/5 of women that are in the AI professional field. So if you're thinking about that 20% line, when we look at that for AI professionals by job category, we see what appears to be a fairly distinct pattern, where we have between 24% for entry-level AI professionals, and it goes all the way down to 7% for the highest manager levels, MG3, for AI. So there appears to be some pattern here of, as the higher rank you get, the less likely women are to be in those ranks. Really interesting. We also, of course, wanted to compare mean-based salaries. That's one of the big questions for women in groups that we wanted to help support by doing an analysis and assessing for significant differences. So this is a really, really interesting part of our study. And what we have found is that for individual contributors 1, 2, and 3, as well as managers 2 and 3 for data science, we see no significant differences in mean-based salaries across 5 of the 6 job categories. Now, people that work for women in organizations and support those organizations would probably consider this a really big win. The only real difference significant that we found is in the MG1 category, and it's only about $9,000 mean-based salary difference between men and women. Otherwise, there are no significant differences in data science mean-based salaries across all 6 categories by male and female. Now, for AI professionals, we ran the same type of analysis, and we actually found no significant differences at all. So when it comes to gender, the biggest issue appears to be the percentage, if we want to call it an issue, but the percentage of male versus female for data science and AI, but the salary itself seems to be pretty much on par, with the exception of data science MG1. I thought you guys would find that very interesting. TJ, you want to wrap us up?
Yes, happy to. Thanks, Beverly, for walking us through all those numbers. As I mentioned at the top of the call, you can use this QR code or go straight to our website and sign up for our community to get access to all 50 plus pages of our 2023 report with additional insights. We covered the highlights today, but more data to be found in all 50 pages. So that wraps us up, and look at that, Beverly, we're right on time. And we can move into some of the questions that were in the chat box. Beverly, you want to just take some turns here in grabbing them? I'm happy to go first while you take a look and find a question. Okay, sounds good.
Yep. Most of this.
Go ahead.
Most of the responses to the questions are based on our experience and our opinions, and don't necessarily represent Burtch as a company or the data that we have from the salary report, but we will give it our best.
You got it.
So the first question is, what is the future of data science as AI takes prominence, such as ChatGPT developing coding skills over time? In my opinion, I've been asked this question quite a bit. I think that the future of data science is going to be, I heard someone call it hands-free coding. I thought that was really interesting, where language becomes much more of a coding and knowing how to ask the right questions in the right way. So I see a future where we're able to do things more efficiently, and are understanding coding and how coding works and thinking through that process will help know how to articulate. So it'll be interesting to see the next generations that are born maybe without having to go through the coding process, and to see if they understand how to ask the right questions. But that's what I think, is that some of the ChatGPT and other LLMs and other types of generative AI and AI in general type of capabilities will make our our modeling and our data science more efficient and potentially more language-based.
Thanks, Beverly. I'm going to jump on one of these questions, which is, are you noticing more companies holding back on flexibility when it comes to work from home versus in office? I think that, you know, one of the, oh, you want me to take off the, yeah, 1 second.
Yeah, if you don't mind, just so we can see our adorable faces.
Did that work?
Yes.
All right. So I would say the pendulum, I think, is swinging back towards a little bit more in office. You know, we still have organizations that are 100% remote and will remain that way moving forward. I would say the majority of our organization clients that we work with are leaning towards 2 or 3 days in the office and 2 or 3 days at home. Recently talked to one organization that wants 5 days in office. So there are some out there, and you know, I think this will continue to be kind of a little bit of a tug of war between employers and employees, but I think we'll land somewhere in that hybrid 2 or 3 in and 2 or 3 out.
I don't think we'll ever go back to the same. I don't know if that, I mean, not in our lifetimes. I'm not sure we'll go back to exactly the same, the way things used to be. But that's a really interesting question. Someone asked, what piece of advice would you give to someone that's entry level looking to go into contract staffing? And I would say, just really get into it. You know, the contract staffing world is an interesting one in that the permanent employees see the contractors a certain way, and the contractors are sort of positioned in a certain way, almost as, you know, in some cases they're seen as more disposable. So I would say really, really get into it and lead into the role and show that you're interested. And also take on a mentor. Don't be afraid to ask someone, can you serve as my mentor? Or if you went to college somewhere that's still near where you live today, maybe consider asking your college if they have a mentorship program, or if you're part of an organization like I'm through Technology Association of Georgia and Informs, they both have mentorship programs. There are women in organizations that have mentorship programs. There are lots of places that you can gain some mentorship. So for contractors, really get into it. Please consider getting a mentor. And thirdly, try to really map out your path. Don't just like hop from contractor role to contractor role meaninglessly. You know, really map out your path. I went to work for Nielsen for a very specific reason. And at the time, I'd had mostly primary data in my tool belt. I had lots of primary data, and I really wanted to work with secondary data. And so, plus Nielsen's a huge name, and it's like super fun to work for Nielsen. So I went to work for Nielsen for that purpose. So really map out, you know, it's kind of, it's an interesting analogy, but do you ever see people with like a ton of tattoos, TJ, and they don't plan ahead? Like, you know, if you're going to do some kind of ocean creature on one arm, like go ahead and do like, plan ahead your contracting roles. Don't just sort of do them happenstancely.
And then I would also add, get in touch with organizations like Burtch Works, who have access to contract jobs. So that's a good way to go. I'm going to pivot to a negotiation question. So how would you suggest negotiating a higher bonus for someone early on in their career? You know, look, I think bonuses can be hard to negotiate. Oftentimes, they're kind of preset by HR depending on the level that you're in. So I think negotiating on bonuses can be challenging. But what I will say is oftentimes bonuses, you know, get paid out at a certain percentage, right? And it's important to understand historically how an organization is paid out. So if you have a target bonus of 20%, what did it pay out the last couple of years is a good question to ask. And also understanding, you know, how do they land on that number? Is it just individual performance? Is it the team's performance? Or is it just the company as a whole, or some combination of those three? So those are good questions to ask, but I think it's probably challenging to get a bigger number. That probably comes with changes in job level more often.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Someone asked a question about the dip and what causes the dip when moving from the highest level individual contributor to the lowest level manager. And a couple of things. One, we're not positive there's a significant difference. We didn't test for that, but that is something that we could test. So if we just make the assumption that it is a significant difference between the highest level IC to the lowest level MG, we'll make that assumption for now. Secondly, cause is a very strong word in our field. So the only way you can really assess cause, you can have causal inference, but to say something causes something, I'd have to design an experiment, which we have not done. But I will give you some suggestions about what could potentially cause, assuming that there is a dip. Okay. So I think that when you move into the highest level of individual contributor, you get into more of the principal types of roles, and those get sort of rolled into the IC3. And someone can stay a high level individual contributor for a long, like that could be their entire career. I've told TJ this. I sometimes wonder if I should have just done that, because you stay super close to the data. You're always, you're in that mode. So serving as the highest level individual contributor, those people can make pretty good money as principals. And so moving into a managerial role where you're leading teams and people's performance, then you sometimes will have to go down a bit, but the ceiling is higher. So I think some of those principles might be what's showing that.
Yeah, I'd add most people that are in an IC3 role probably aren't interested in management. And if they were, they probably wouldn't transition into an MG1 level role. It would, they'd probably maybe skip that level and go to something more similar to an MG2 would be my guess.
Yeah.
Numbers.
Yeah, I can take a. Yeah.
Oh,
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, one question I liked was how to transition to a different industry if you've been working 10 plus years in one industry.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to grab.
Okay. Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts here. I think data is data, and I think if you're a good data professional, you can add value to an organization in any industry, even if you have a lot of experience in one. Now, while I say that, that's what I believe, not every client that we work with agrees with that. So we certainly have clients that are more open to professionals coming from different industries. And oftentimes where I find this to be the most success is if you're working in an industry that is maybe more advanced in a specific area, and now an industry that has been lagging behind in that area is looking to add that level of expertise. That's when they'll really be looking for someone, from outside to come in and add that area of expertise. So that's one area that I see that work quite well. I would even advise people, professionals younger in their career, to, make sure you get some experience in different areas so that you kind of round out that skill set. It might make it a little easier throughout your career to try some different things. But Beverly, what else do you have to share on that?
Well, I have a slightly different perspective. I think data is data to an extent. Like, I really believe in understanding the context, so much so that I will put on my closed-toed shoes and go out to an industrial site and see how the data is being produced for, melting glass to make bottles using natural gas. Like, and that's not even a hypothetical example. That is a real example. I'll also go to a nonprofit and meet with people that are addicted to opioids to understand that data. So I think data is data to an extent, but understanding the context is really important. I tend to think that for the most part, you should focus in on two industries. For me, I love financial services and I love consulting. So being able to lean into those, especially consulting, because you get to see all the different types of industries. So that one's kind of, cheating, because you get to experience multiple, you see all things that are going on. But if you're coming from something like healthcare, that's a little trickier. If you're trying to go from healthcare to retail, that's a little trickier, because there are so many nuances within healthcare. If you're moving even from financial services into retail, that can be a little tricky, although there is a retail component to financial services, depending on whether they have, branches and that sort of thing. But tech is probably the most palatable when you're transitioning, because with tech, there aren't things that you're probably not doing. You're probably doing a full gamut of data science activities. That being said, if you're faced with any sort of like resistance, the way to get in, if you really want to transition, is you may have to go in through the BI door. Sometimes it is easier to start with a BI type of role, really cut your teeth on the data, or even a data engineering, but really cut your teeth on the data, really get to know the context, really understand the business models, and then move your way up in the data science ranks. Now, that might require going down a little bit in salary, but it's a way that you could transition if you start facing some resistance. I think companies are fairly open-minded nowadays, though.
Good counterpoints there, Beverly. I think we probably have time for one more question. And this one I think is a good one. Do you have any insight into how long a typical job search is taking these days? And this was actually this is a question that we included. You'll see more details on it. We included in our survey, so it's in the full report. And it looks like it's, 3 to 6 months is majority for what it's taking people, but certainly with the uncertainty in the current market and limitations in jobs right now, there are some that are taking over 6 months. I'd say for those that it's taking less than 3 months are really in high demand skill sets are still moving off the market quickly. So just kind of depends on what level of experience you currently have, what specific skill sets you've worked on most recently, and kind of how long that average search is taking. Beverly, is there any other? We might have time for one more here.
I think we covered most, and I think we had some final. Did we have some final call to action we were going to cover?
Yeah, that's all I have for us today. So I really appreciate you joining. Again, to get access to the full report, head to our website, join the community, and you'll find the salary calculator too there, which I think is a really cool addition. Beverly, anything else before we sign out?
Just remember to call the Bev for analytics. And follow me on LinkedIn for all kinds of BurtchWorks content and events. And remember us for your data science and analytics solutions, training, and talent. Thanks, y'all.
Thanks so much for joining.